What's up everyone, Steven here from TechMaker Studio. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the useState hook in React.js. If you're new to the channel, at TechMaker, we show you how things work by building out real projects or semi-realistic examples in our shorter episodes. If you like this type of content and you want to see our more in-depth workshop videos, just be sure to subscribe to our channel and stay in touch. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and jump into this video. So in this video, we're going to build out the beginnings of a simple game where you can raise pets. So you can see basically here we have some sort of blank pets that haven't, loaded names or anything like that. You can see there's this hunger property and a feed button, and then up here you can see we have food remaining. So this is going to be really, really simple, and I have a GitHub repository with this starter project that I'll link to in the description where you can clone this for yourself. Let's jump over to the code and take a look at that. So I've got a basic React app here with simply an app component. It's got Bootstrap installed, which you can look at if you download the code in the index, not the index.js. The index HTML. So we basically brought in Bootstrap via CDN, no big deal. And in here we have some data that we're looping through with this map function, and we're rendering a dog component. Now, we're not going to go into all of this setup in this video. I just want to show you the essential idea behind useState and how you can think about it, and then we're going to hook up all of the functionality that we want for this app. So it's sort of like, let's take a look at kind of the idea, and then let's just build some stuff with it for a little bit, and that'll be it. So before I forget, let's take a look at dogs.js, which is really just exporting an array of JavaScript objects, and you can kind of scroll through if you clone this and look at what's in here, but it's really basic, just a list of attributes. So if we move over into our dog component, you can see that we're importing React and useState from React. We're basically just destructuring this so that we can essentially just call useState out here directly. So we can just call this function and it won't have any impact on our page. What useState is meant for, and I come from a very heavy object-oriented background, and I know this is a function, not a class, but I still think this is a good way to think about it. Maybe not the best way, but it's a great way to think about it, in my opinion, is to think about when you run the useState function, what you're declaring is sort of like attributes on an object. So, and these are attributes that need to be here. So, for example, what things do dogs have in common? Well, you might say they have names. In our app, they're going to have images. You might say they have a size, a breed, and all dogs have these things. So, in my opinion, from an object-oriented perspective, that's what we're going to use state to do. So, for example, we could say const, and then useState returns two things. It returns the actual state variable, and it returns a function to allow you to update it. So we could say like name, set name equals useState, and then it takes an argument which sets the default. So we could say John, for example. And so if we come over here, it didn't do anything, because what I need to do down here is actually set up this to be the state variable name. And so now you can see all of the dogs have the same name of John. So React is all about creating reusable components, which is why I think it's valid to think of these dog objects or components as objects and think of them in this manner. And you can tell that React wants us to think of it this way, because if we try to say a conditional here, so let's just assume we have a conditional that evaluates to false. So we're trying to conditionally attach an attribute. If we save this, it's going to say React hook useState is called conditionally. And it's going to give you more explanation about how they have to be called in the same order, and there's hacks you can do to get around this. But in my opinion, the better way to think about it is these are necessary attributes that have to be here. And so I prefer to think of it that way. For example, you could actually do something like state set state, and then have use state, and then pass in an object, and then manage this sub-level kind of state inside of your object. But I just think that React components, in particular with the function style, are more set up for you to do like small components with all of the data encapsulated in obvious top-level properties. So I think that's just the best way to go. So in real life, what we would do here is have some sort of empty state for each one of our properties. So you might have something like loading, and then you might have some other hook that actually sets the name once it gets data back from an API. And we'll do that in the next video when we talk about useEffect. But in this video, we're actually just getting everything straight from local data. So what we can do is inside of here, we can do props.info.name. And then we can come over here, and now you'll see that the names are all pulling from our data. So we can do that for each thing here. So let's say breed, set breed, and then we'll use info props info.breed. Set this here. The hunger level will be slightly more complicated. So if we look over at dogs.js, you'll see that we have 5. So I've kind of got this on a scale of 1 to 10. So what we need to basically do is convert that into a percentage. So what we could do is just say something like const hunger, and then set hunger. And then this actually takes a function. So we can do this here and put this in a calculation. So we can say something like return props.info.hunger divided by 10, and then we're going to multiply that times 100. Okay, and then down here we should be able to do hunger plus, actually we should do like backticks, hunger like this, and then we'll just make this be percent, and then close it off like that. And let's save that, and let's go look. And so you can see now you have hunger meters that actually vary, which is cool. So let's just make sure our corgi is the hungriest at 100% normally, so 10 out of 10. And that looks correct down here. The ID is wrong on there though. Let me fix that. Okay, so the last two things we need to add are the image URL and the, what was that? The size, I think. Image URL, and then set image URL. Now some of these setters you'll probably never actually call. So in that case, we could add underscores or something like that so that we know like we're not actually using these. It's not meant to be used, something like that. So like set breed, set name, like those may not get called right now, but we'll leave it alone because we will use them in the next video. Just pointing that out, that there's a syntax for things that aren't used sometimes, which is just put an underscore. So let's do const size, set size equals, and then we'll just grab this, and that should be size. And so let's change this to be image URL, and I don't need the quotes here. And let's change, well, we don't need to set the size anywhere in the video or in the view. So let's just save that, and let's go look. And now we've got all of our images showing up. So the last thing I want to do is basically show you how to hook up these feed buttons and how to update the state, so that we see how we actually use the other part of the use state, which is this set state side. So what we want to do is on click on the button here, we're going to say, let's just say feed pet or feed dog, maybe, because we only have dogs right now. So then we're going to say const feed dog equals a function here. And in this function, what we're going to do is we're going to reduce the hunger. So we're going to say, let's start by just saying set hunger, and then we could say hunger -1. Okay, so let's try this and let's go look at what happens. So if we click here, you can see that the hunger is going down slightly on these. Very, very little. How can we do? We actually probably want to change this so that we're not calculating the hunger here. What we probably want to do is have that be a calculation here. So like const hunger percentage. This video is going to get slightly longer than 10 minutes probably, but we'll try to hurry it up. So let's just cut that and let's just return this like that. And then up here, it is useful to know that you can call a function there, but we don't necessarily need it. Info hunger. And in actual fact, because we don't want to check the props here anymore. We want to keep track of our local state, right? And then we can come down here and just change this to hunger percentage. And let's save that. And now let's try it. And now if I click feed, it looks like the dog is like really actually getting full now. Okay, cool. So why did we do that? So basically, originally I thought this math made sense, and now that I'm a little bit further into this, I realize we actually need to change this to change the hunger integer that's in here, not the percentage, because the percentage is really just a calculation for this bar. The actual hunger we're keeping track of in those integer values, or at least that 0 to 10 scale. So a couple of other final thoughts. I know we're over the 10 minutes specified in the title, but I think that it'll be worth it. First of all, I just realized that if we refresh over here and we feed this corgi, it scrolls back up and adds a pound sign. And basically the reason for that is because we did not prevent default on the click here. So we should say e.prevent default like so. And now if we refresh, let me actually get rid of the pound sign there. If we refresh and we click feed, it shouldn't go anywhere. So that's right now. So far, we've only been working within this dog component. And what I want to do is actually add something to the class or the app component above. And what we're going to do is say const, first of all, I need to import React useState from React. And then what I want to do here is say const let's say food and set food. Let's make that more clear. Food remaining. So remember, this is meant to be kind of the foundation for a little game. So we'll start off with 20. And then here, let's say this is food remaining. And so what we need to do so when we feed these dogs, we actually want to pass that number back up into our parent and say, hey, we just used some food, right? So what we can do is pass the function setFoodRemaining down into our component. This is useful for understanding the difference between like useState in one component and another, and you can get an idea for like the different levels here. So the dog has its own state variables which really pertain to the dog, whereas this is like a game and the food remaining is more specific to the player or a higher level concept, so it makes sense that it's up a level. Okay, so then what we want to do is when we feed the dog, we want to set food. We want to say props.set food remaining, if I can type, and then we'll say actually let's do this. Let's say use food. I'm going to change this up a little bit. Use food, just one function, and the reason for that is because I don't want to have to pass in the current state of like how much food is left down in here, but at least not yet. So what I'm going to do is say use food equals use food, and then I need to define a function up here. Const use food equals function, and what it's going to do is say set food remaining minus 1, and if I click feed now, you'll see the food remaining goes down. Now it will go below 0, so that's not something I'm going to fix in this video, but we will get to that later. So we actually, if this were a game, we would stop this from going all the way down. And we also might have some rules in here about like if it's a certain size dog, it should use more food or less food. So maybe we'll actually build this out into something a little bit more interesting, kind of make this a little bit more in depth. But I think I'm going to wrap this up here so I can kind of stay close to my 10-minute window that I'm aiming at. And hopefully this kind of gives you a little bit of an idea on how useState works and some different patterns you can follow. And anyway, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and I will talk to you in the next part where we look at useEffect.